Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about my week number 13 tight end start or sit decisions for fantasy football in 2021. Inside today's video, we're going to be going in depth into every single matchup from Thursday Night Football all the way until Monday Night Football, and I'll be telling you guys whether I believe you should start or sit the tight ends in every single matchup. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask, if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, to please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below, because not only is it free, I put out content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 Fantasy Football Championship. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure to hit that like button down below to help boost this video up the algorithm so that more beautiful people like yourself can see today's video. I would also like to ask, if you guys are on Twitter and would like to follow me on there, to please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 13 tight end start or sit decisions. We begin with Thursday Night Football between the Dallas Cowboys and the New Orleans Saints. In this game, I'm going to be firing up Dalton Schultz. Now, it does appear that Amari Cooper is going to be 100% good to go in this game, which in my opinion does definitely knock down Dalton Schultz a peg last week when it was just Michael Gallup and Cedric Wilson. I was very confident in Dalton Schultz, and he played quite well up against the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, though, this week, CeeDee Lamb's going to be back, as well as Amari Cooper, so that does kind of knock my confidence down on Dalton Schultz, but any given week, this man could score a touchdown or two going up against the New Orleans Saints, whose defense has been a rocky road all season long. We've seen them perform up to a top-tier defense, then we've seen them other games look like one of the worst defenses in the NFL. So this week, going up against the Dallas Cowboys, I am very interested in Dalton Schultz, with his upside being so high game in and game out. So Dalton Schultz will be a start for me at the tight end position. For the New Orleans Saints, they sadly lost Adam Troutman 2 weeks ago, and ever since then, there really isn't a clear number one tight end on the team, or a guy that I'm very interested at all in starting in terms of fantasy football. Juwan Johnson did show a flash early on in the season of looking solid with Jameis Winston, but all he is a guy that if he scores a touchdown, you're going to be happy. If he doesn't score, he might just drop a goose egg in your lineup. So Juwan Johnson is definitely going to be a sit for me this week. Next up, we move to the Sunday slate, beginning with the New York Football Giants at the Miami Dolphins. And in this game, I like Mike Licky on my Gesicki on. Now, the Giants defense did look very good last week up against the Philadelphia Eagles, but it is also important to note that while the Giants defense looked good in that game, a lot of the reason was because Jalen Hurts' wide receiver core was just dropping passes left and right. I think that Mike Gesicki and Tua Tagovailoa will have no issue at all carving up the Giants defense like a fucking Thanksgiving turkey. So I love Mike Gesicki in this game. Devontae Parker does seem like he could come back this week, which does in a way take away slight, quote-unquote, slight targets away from Mike Gesicki. But if I'm being honest with you, Gesicki is still the number 2 option on this team for Tua Tagovailoa. So I think that Mike Gesicki, based upon volume alone, is definitely worthy of a start up against the Giants. Had Daniel Jones have been healthy in this game, I would think about starting Evan Ingram. The Dolphins defense has looked very good as of recently, but Evan Ingram is one of those tight ends that is pretty involved on his team. The biggest issue is that Evan Ingram's involvement is just like 5 feet away from Daniel Jones. He's never down there 10, 20 yards away from Daniel Jones catching a long ball. That does help out his fantasy upside. That just has not been relevant all year long. He's just been kind of a short-range tight end. But here, going up against the Dolphins with Mike Giraffe Neck Glennon at the quarterback position, there's just no way I'm starting Evan Ingram this week. Next up, we move to the Indianapolis Colts at the Houston Texans. And the Colts have 2 tight ends that, in my opinion, are pretty good. And while that's all fine and dandy for the real-life Indianapolis Colts, in terms of fantasy football, that absolutely sucks, because any given week, I would not be surprised if Jack Doyle has the better game or if Mo Alley Cox has the better game, and a lot of those points hinge on scoring a touchdown. Now, this week, they go up against the Houston Texans, and there should be touchdown galore from the Indianapolis Colts. I believe they absolutely slap up the Houston Texans, but there's a pretty solid chance, in my opinion, that this is a Jonathan Taylor game, a game where he scores 2+ touchdowns, and then you're really hoping that they just hang 5 total touchdowns on him, and Carson Wentz is able to air the ball out, maybe give Jack Doyle or Mo Alley Cox a touchdown. In my opinion, based upon the fact that there doesn't really seem to be a clear number 1 tight end on this team as of recently, I'm just going to sit down both of them. Brevin Jordan has looked pretty decent as of recently for the Houston Texans, but I don't see this game being close at all, and I think the Houston Texans are going to struggle mightily up against the Indianapolis Colts, so Jordan will be a sit for me for the Houston Texans. Next up, we move to the Minnesota Minnesota Vikings at the Detroit Lions. Technically, this is quite the smash matchup for the Minnesota Vikings, so some people may look to start Tyler Conklin. In my opinion, this is kind of one of those offenses that you can really make an argument for having too many cooks in the kitchen, meaning they just have so many fucking weapons in this offense that Tyler Conklin kind of just gets pushed to the side. They have Dalvin Cook. Normally, they're not going to have him in this game, so they have Alexander Mattison, they have Justin Jefferson, they have Adam Thielen, they have KJ Osborne, and they have Tyler Conklin. There are a lot of receiving weapons, a lot of receiving threats on this team, and in my opinion, based upon what we've seen recently out of Tyler Conklin, I just don't really want to start him, even in this exquisite matchup up against the Detroit Lions. For the Lions, I'm going to play TJ Hawkinson. I play the guy every single week. He has the talent to be a top 5 tight end game in and game out, but the volume has been suspect all year long. He is by far and away the best receiving option on this Detroit Lions team, and for some fucking reason, this guy isn't just force-fed the ball game in and game out. Jared Goff loves dumping the ball off to the running back, which is not going to be DeAndre Swift in this game, but it will be Jamal Williams, and for some reason, he just has not found TJ Hawkinson all that many times. I do think that this could be a game where the Lions, or this will be a game where the Detroit Lions are going to be trying to crawl their way back into the game. They're going to be throwing the ball a lot, just like every single game for the Detroit Lions. They're basically never anywhere near in a game, and I think TJ Hawkinson could have a big game this week. I start him every single week with the upside of being the number 1 tight end, but for some reason, they just never give him the ball enough for him to actually reach his peak. And next up, we move to the Philadelphia Eagles at the Jumbo Jets. Dallas Goedert did struggle last week. This whole Philadelphia Eagles offense struggled last week, just like I discussed when we were talking about the Giants earlier. But this week, while I don't love the Giants defense as a whole, the Jets defense is just deep down. This is one of the worst defenses in the NFL, and I believe Jalen Hurts is going to have a huge bounce back showing in this game and potentially be the number 1 quarterback in all of fantasy football. Last week, for some reason, they were force-feeding the ball to Jalen Reagor, who can't even catch the ball if you fucking pay him, and that's what they do. They pay him to catch the football, and he cannot do that. I believe that Jalen Hurts will be looking a lot more for Dallas Goedert in this offense in this game ever since Zach Ertz left the offense. The amount of upside that Dallas Goedert has game in and game out has increased immensely, because you don't have to worry about the fact that while they get all the way down the field throwing the ball to Dallas Goedert, that Zach Ertz magically caps the drive off with a touchdown. So I think that Dallas Goedert does have a lot of upside in this game up against the Jumbo Jets. For the Jets, we have seen some games where Ryan Griffin has shown flashes, and I actually think that he's an alright tight end, but on the Jets with Zach Wilson as the quarterback, and I talked about this, I think, in probably every single video this week. If you guys have ended up enjoying this video, make sure you do hit that subscribe button as well as hitting that like button, and you can check out my videos on my starter sit, wide receivers, running backs, quarterbacks. This is the tight end video, obviously, so you guys can check those out after the video. But in those videos, I talked about how I'm going to be honest, I think I was wrong about what I said last week. I was talking about how it's not a decline going from Cool Joe Flacco, going from Magic Mike White, going from Josh Johnson to going to Zach Wilson, but based upon what we saw last week, but Nick, they won the game. I understand they won the game, but Zach Wilson just doesn't look good. And that obviously limits the upside of their pass catchers. Elijah Moore, I am still comfortable starting, but Ryan Griffin definitely not going to be looking his way for the remainder of the season. Next up, we move to the Arizona Cardinals at the Chicago Bears, and here we have Zach Ertz, the guy we just talked about a little bit ago in Arizona. This man has been so key in this offense, especially inside the red zone. It does appear that DeAndre Hopkins is going to be back in this game, as well as the short king, Mr. 5'9", Kyler Murray, going up against the Chicago Bears defense. While that was one of the better defenses over the last 3-4 years, as of recently, that defense has been a complete and utter fucking disaster, besides last week up against the Detroit Lions, but they almost lost that game had Dan Campbell not been a complete and utter idiot. Like, the coaching there is just atrocious for the Lions, so the Bears, even with atrocious coaching, end up winning that game with Matt Nagy, but I do think that Zach Ertz has a bunch of upside in this game up against the Bears. I am very excited about Kyler Murray returning to this offense. For the Chicago Bears, the quarterback situation is definitely up in the air. Is it going to be Andy Dalton in this game, or will Justin Fields be good to go? Now, Justin Fields did have a couple of cracked ribs, so I don't know why, if you're the Bears organization, that you are going to force back Justin Fields, right? This is your franchise guy. You traded up in the 2021 NFL Draft to get this guy. So why are you going to push him up? You're not making the fucking playoffs. You are done for. Just start Andy Dalton. It's okay. Dalton's just fine. Dalton can throw the ball to Cole Kmet. If Dalton does not play and they play a quote-unquote unhealthy, in my opinion, Justin Fields, a banged-up version of Justin Fields, I'm still fine starting Cole Kmet, though, because Cole Kmet has been productive with Justin Fields as well as with Andy Dalton, so I'm just fine starting Cole Kmet, regardless of the quarterback situation in Chicago, as we've seen Cole Kmet get a lot more targets deeper down the depths of the season. Next up, we pivot to the LA Chargers at the Cincinnati Bengals, and CJ Uzomah is a start, but he's one of those deep down in the depths kind of a start where you're just hoping for that touchdown. This could be a game that is easily a complete and utter shootout between Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert the pervert. But with how bad the Chargers offense looked last week and with how good the Cincinnati Bengals defense looked last week up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, maybe this isn't as high scoring of a game as I personally believed and how most people would believe, because everyone wants to see a shootout between two of the quote-unquote premier quarterbacks from the 2020 NFL draft. But I do like CJ Uzomah to potentially make a resurgence in this game. But again, he's like tight end 18, tight end 19, just one of those guys that if you're down bad with a bye week, your tight end is on bye, or maybe your tight end suffered an injury, then you can start CJ Uzomah because the upside is there, but he's also kind of one of those tight ends in the offense where there are just so many cooks inside the kitchen. And speaking of cooks, what a great transition that was right there. Jared Cook, tight end of the LA Chargers. He has just been so frustrating this season, if I'm being honest with you. Last year for the New Orleans Saints, Jared Cook was productive in terms of fantasy football, but this year for the LA Chargers, with Donald Parham there, vulturing a lot of the touchdown opportunities, Jared Cook has been basically irrelevant over a majority of the season. This week up against the Bengals, I just don't really see that changing. Next up, we move to a matchup between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons. And I know so many of you guys are sick and tired of the bullshit of Kyle Pitts. And I agree, I'm not going to rank Kyle Pitts as a top 5 tight end on the week, but how many tight ends could you possibly have on your fucking roster where you feel comfortable sitting Kyle Pitts? Because even though Kyle Pitts has sucked complete and utter donkey cock in a lot of the games this season, he is still a tight end that you want to be starting because of the upside that he has. All it takes is a couple of catches for this guy to have a humongous day in terms of fantasy football, but the biggest issue here is that Matt Ryan doesn't look good as of recently, and that for some reason, even without Calvin Ridley, they're just not force-feeding the ball to Kyle Pitts. I don't get it at all. He's still a guy that I want to start, but I am getting very disappointed with his performance as of recently in terms of the Buccaneers tight ends. They obviously have Rob Gronkowski. They have a couple other tight ends as well, but when Gronk is healthy, you got to be starting him. This is a guy that could be the number 1 tight end game in and game out when he is healthy. Tampa Bay Tom Brady just loves in the red zone to sprinkle the ball his way, to throw the ball to Mr. Yo Soy Fiesta, Rob Gronkowski. And up against the Atlanta Falcons, things could get dirty like the Dirty Bird. Speaking of the Atlanta Falcons, I expect Rob Gronkowski to absolutely smash the sorry-ass Atlanta Falcons in this matchup. So Gronk is up to be potentially the number 1 tight end in fantasy football, like I said a little bit ago. Next up, we move to the Jacksonville Jaguars at the LA Rams. And I think if you're trying to get really, really spicy, you could start James O'Shaughnessy because Dan Arnold get to the chopper. Dan Arnold is hurt, so James O'Shaughnessy does slot in as the tight end there, and he was seeing some volume last week. My concern is that the LA Rams have been so fucking bad as of recently that this is just a comeback game, a bounce back game where they just beat the ever-living shit out of the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm talking like a 42-10 type of beatdown here from the LA Rams because they just have not looked good as of recently over the last couple of games. And I think here up against the Jaguars, this is a smash matchup. Now, in a lot of scenarios, you don't want to be starting Tyler Higbee. He's one of those guys that is basically a bottom of the barrel tight end at this point in the season. Why is that? Because he's basically touchdown or bust. This week, though, they're going up against the Jaguars. There's a pretty good chance that they score a bunch of touchdowns, so I will be starting Tyler Higbee this week, but he has been pretty annoying thus far this season, and with the addition of Odell, it doesn't give me a lot more confidence, considering Odell actually looked pretty solid up against the Green Bay Packers last week. Next up, we move to the Washington football team at the Las Vegas Raiders. In this game, I like both tight ends, Logan Thomas as well as Foster Moreau for the Raiders. Now, when it comes to the Raiders tight ends, there is still a chance out there that Darren Waller does end up playing. So I'm not going to completely rule out Darren Waller. But my assumption is that he doesn't play this week, and maybe he misses next week as well. But lucky for you, if you have Darren Waller and Foster Moreau is available in your league, I understand that Foster Moreau doesn't have the exact same skill set as Darren Waller, but when Darren Waller has been banged up thus far this season, as well as last season, we have seen Foster Moreau shine bright like a goddamn diamond. And I expect up against the Washington football team, this to be a very high-scoring tit-for-tat back-and-forth affair with Foster Moreau finding his way on into the end zone. So I like him this week up against the football team. For the Washington football team, Logan Thomas came back last week and he scored a touchdown, but they didn't rule it a touchdown. Now let me know down below in the comment section what you guys thought about that. If you made it this far, let me know. Did Logan Thomas score or not? Because in my opinion, I think he did score. Now again, we don't have the exact same camera angles that the officials are looking at in the games, but based upon the footage that I saw, I personally thought that Logan Thomas did score a touchdown, and they kind of did fuck him over in his return game after he's been out since like week 4. But yeah, up against the Raiders, I do like Logan Thomas. Next up, we move to the Baltimore Ravens at the Pittsburgh Steelers. In this game, I like both tight ends, Mr. Pat F, Mr. Pat Fryer Muth, Mr. Muth. I don't even know exactly how to pronounce this guy's name. Apparently, I say it wrong every single time. There are a couple of players in the NFL, despite the fact that I watch every Thursday, every Sunday, every Monday, and then I rewatch some games and I hear the announcer say it. For some reason, I just can't get these guys' names correct. Fryermouth is probably one of them, as is Dallas Goedert, depending on how I call him. People make fun of me for that one, but it is what it is. Going up against the Baltimore Ravens, the Steelers are down bad, right? Big Ben Roethlisberger looks basically as useful as a used condom, but at the end of the day, Fryermouth has still been able to play well despite Big Ben being an absolute disaster under center, so I'm going to fire out Mr. Pat F in this matchup. Mark Andrews. Lamar Jackson last week up against the Browns looked like shit, but he did one of those rare Pat Mahomes things. You know where Pat Mahomes like uncorks the ball, he's like back like this, and he launches it like 70 yards down the field, and it's like the meme is like, fuck it, Tyreek Hill out there somewhere. This was a true fuck it, Mark Andrews out there somewhere, and he just heaved the thing, and Mark Andrews came down with it, making probably the best catch of the year, in my opinion. Mark Andrews has looked solid all season long, and I like him here up against the division rivals of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Lamar Jackson bounced back. He just looked so bad up against the Browns last week. Next up, we got the San Francisco 49ers at the Seattle Seahawks, the penultimate game to Sunday Night Football. In this matchup, we got George Kittle and Gerald Everett. Now, I know all season long, we've been fading Gerald Everett, we've been fading these Seattle tight ends, but as of recently, because Russ's finger is fucked up, the guy has been throwing the ball a lot more to Gerald Everett. While that sucks for DK Metcalf, because the guy's basically doing his Houdini impression, you can't fucking see the guy, he's invisible, John Cena style, and it sucks for fantasy football, but that has greatly helped out Gerald Everett's upside, so I would dub him as a start this week for the 49ers. George Kittle will have some good games. He'll have some down games, but at the end of the day, he is one of the best tight ends in the National Football League in terms of a pure catcher, as well as being a tight end as a whole. This guy literally blocks the fuck out of people every single week. That's very fun to watch. Obviously, doesn't get you in any fantasy points unless you're in a point per block league, but I don't think those exist, but hey, maybe they do. George Kittle going up against the Seattle defense. Chef's kiss, Magnifique. I love George Kittle in this matchup. Next game here, we got Sunday night football between the Denver Broncos and the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead. In this matchup, I like both Noah Fant as well as Travis Kelce, but Noah Fant has just been one of those guys that's been an auto start over the last couple of years, but I never really feel supremely confident in starting him. I'm just going to go ahead and read his stats off to you so you guys can kind of understand what I'm saying. Last week up against the Chargers, 3 receptions on 4 targets for 12 yards. If you're in a half PPR league, that's 2.7 points. The week prior, 8.4 points, 1.8 points, 6.4 points, then has 20 points up against the Raiders, and then 3.5 points, 13 points, 2 points, 11 points, 9 points. So he's been pretty inconsistent all season long. Is that because of Teddy Two Gloves? Probably. I think Noah Fant is a very talented NFL tight end. In a vacuum, he's very good, but for the team, he just hasn't been all that consistent game in and game out. The Chiefs defense has been bad earlier on in the season, but recently they've kind of caught fire. So Noah Fant is not an ideal start, but he is a tight end that I would be willing to start because of the talent that he possesses. For the Kansas City Chiefs, Travis Kelce has, in my opinion, been a disappointment this year because he is not really living up to that first round draft selection that you took him at. He's obviously been one of the best tight ends in fantasy football. In my opinion, he's the best tight end in the NFL, but I think a lot of people who drafted him super early may have been a little bit disappointed with that selection. But at the end of the day, going up against the Denver Broncos, going up against any fucking defense, he could be going up against the best NFL defense alive, and you're still going to be starting him. So I like Travis Kelce in this game. Final matchup here, we got Monday Night Football between the New England Patriots at the Buffalo Bills. In this one, Dawson Knox one time, if you are with me, is going to be a start. When he returned from that injury a couple of weeks ago, he did disappoint, but after that, he has been nothing short of amazing. Dawson Knox is personally one of my favorite tight ends in the NFL. This guy was a nobody for the first couple of years of his career, but this year, he has been nothing short of fan-fucking-tastic. I love Dawson Knox in this matchup up against the New England Patriots. Even though the Patriots defense has looked good, I still think Dawson Knox gets his. And then the Patriots up against the Bills. The Bills defense has been pretty solid this season as well, one of the best defenses in the NFL. But I do like Hunter Henry. He is one of those tight ends where it is straight up touchdown or bust, because this guy gets like 3 targets a game. If he doesn't mosey his way on into the end zone, then you are going to be very disappointed. The good thing about Hunter Henry is in a lot of these games, he is scoring, so I'm definitely playing him this week up against the Buffalo Bills. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you did end up enjoying, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hitting that like button. I would appreciate it a ton. I love you guys all so much. I hope you have a great rest of your guys' day, and as always, good boy.